The complex pattern on the ceremonial floors of the castle of the Dark Crystal represented a path. No one who saw it could doubt that. What was open to interpretation was where the path had started, where it might end, and, indeed, what the purpose of the journey might be. With its forks and intersections, its arcs and spirals and spheres leading from room to room, it would probably have been seen by one of a transcendentalist cast of mind as a pilgrim's path, the way of enlightenment, leading from station to station of ascending consciousness. Originating in brute, dark matter, the traveller would, metaphorically, rise toward pure spirituality, though never in a straight progression, but always circuitously, even after the journey had apparently been accomplished. For even the purely spiritual soul has unfinished work to do. The cycle of the floor's pattern extended infinitely. The Skeksis, however, did not take that view. The assumption that pure spirituality was in some sense a higher form of being than brute matter was not self-evident to them. How they interpreted the pattern on the floor was clear on the day following the funeral of the Emperor. For them it was a path to the throne. He who aspired to clutch the sceptre in his talons was well advised to be seen treading the path. It suggested some vestigial humility, a sense of due observance, a willingness to submit oneself to a proper discipline. Thus it was that three of them, the ritual master, the chamberlain, and the Gartham master, had spent some hours edging along the path with the expected solemnity, while the rest of the Skeksis formed an audience. Round and round the path the three of them went, and as they went they studied the complexities of the pattern and experimented by taking different forks, different routes always to the same end, in which was their beginning. Each of them was hopeful that sooner or later some hitherto overlooked clue might present itself to him, some untrodden path that by psychic machinery he could not guess at would yield the throne to him. How had the late deceased emperor accomplished this? None of them could recall. As their patience dwindled, their pace gradually increased. None of the three now left the throne room, but studiously gyrated closer and closer to the dais and the throne itself. Their eyes were flickering around beadily. Each of them had to keep a close watch on the other two in order to forestall a sudden lunge for the throne. But there were also factions to consider among the rest of the Skeksis. Would the treasurer and the scroll keeper preserve their traditional loyalty to the ritual master? Would the Gartham master still command the powerful support of the scientist and the slave master? And would the chamberlain still be joined in a triple alliance with the gourmet and the ornamentalist, the triad that together with the old emperor had formed the largest and therefore successful faction at the previous enthronement? It was the chamberlain, filled with a righteous sense of his prior claim, who finally made a grab for the sceptre. Wielding it shoulder high like a scimitar, he spun round to glare at the other two contenders, screeching and snarling his defiance. From his bared yellow fangs, saliva dripped onto the silken floor of the dais. The ritual master was outraged. This was no way to behave on such a solemn occasion. Due right and custom had to be observed, or everything was lost. He started to make a speech of protest, a quivering talon pointed at the chamberlain in denunciation of his gross ambition. The Gartham master's reaction was different, but no less vehement. Striding up to the dais, he thrust his face out at the chamberlain so that they were fang to fang. In his deep voice, the Gartham master pronounced one word: Haxkika! A thrill ran through the watching Skeksis. The chamberlain had no option. He could not now be seen to shrink from the most solemn challenge of the Skeksis. Hissing back into the Gartham master's face, the sceptre still held high, he returned the challenge in an eldritch shriek. Haxkika! At this point, the ritual master withdrew from the contest. Opinion among the rest of the onlooking Skeksis differed on his motivation. Some argued that his innate sense of ceremonial propriety inhibited him. Others maintained that, not being directly challenged, he was evading the ordeal of Haxkika. And a further view was that he was making a political calculation. Against the sheer strength of the Gartham master and the constitutional claim of the chamberlain, he could not hope to be the victor, but by withdrawing at this stage, he would assure himself of the vice-regency beneath whichever of them triumphed, and thus he would be next in line to the throne. Whatever his reasons, the ritual master moved to the centre of the throne room and took charge of the situation. He gave a nod in the direction of the watching slave master, who waddled off to prepare for the ritual. The rest stood still, murmurous with eager anticipation. Many trine had passed since the trial of Hakskika had been witnessed in that chamber. The slave master returned with a score of pod people whom he sent to the side of the room. There they hauled on a long rope running down from a pulley mounted high on the wall. In the middle of the floor, a slab of stone was slowly raised. When it had cleared the surrounding floor, the slave master called out a command. Having secured the rope, the slaves ran across the floor and with their shoulders pushed the slab, which was supported on a pivot, through an arc of 90 degrees. It took them a long time, such was the dead weight of the stone. The Skeksis grinned and twitched with excitement. The Gartham master and the chamberlain furtively watched each other out of the corners of their eyes. The chamberlain had reluctantly laid the sceptre back on the throne. The slave master then issued another order. The slaves ran back to the side of the room and hauled on another rope that was hanging parallel to the first. From the pit that the revolving slab had disclosed, a rock slowly emerged, finally coming to floor level. It was a remarkable rock. 6 feet in height, made of granite, in origin it could have been a Gromlech stone, but it had lost its gloss and pride. It was a dull, unreflective boulder, mutilated by gashed scars. The ritual master ceremoniously held out both his arms toward the slave master, who strutted forward bearing 2 massive broadswords. The ritual master bent his head over the weapons and spat on each in turn. They were then presented to the duelists. The chamberlain, having given each of them a trial whirl around his head, chose first. The Gartham master took his, the slave master retreated to the margin of the floor, and the ritual master intoned, Pi Tabroch. As the one challenged, the chamberlain had had the advantage in choice of sword. His disadvantage was that he had to strike first. He approached the rock, dragging his sword on the ground where it made a trail of little blue sparks. Then he raised the sword to shoulder level, swung it around several times, gathering momentum, and smashed it into the rock with a defiant shout of Hakskika! The sword made a dull clank on the stone. Nothing else happened except for a violent jarring of the chamberlain's back and tepid applause from the ornamentalist and the gourmet. The Gartham master stepped up with a derisive sneer. Grunting, then roaring, he swung the sword around once and dashed it against the rock. Hakskika! A bright spark flashed, and a chip of granite flew off from the impact and skittered across the floor. It was not a decisive blow, the watching Skeksis knew, but the slave master and the scientist cheered it in their guttural voices. The treasurer and the scroll keeper also croaked their admiration in the hope that they had chosen the winning side. The chamberlain took the applause to be a goad from his enemies. They always had underrated him. Very well then, as emperor he would make them regret it.